What's shaking, guys? Mr. E here, and I'm here with something maybe a little bit different. Aside from doing just Let's Plays, I'm going to start moving into also doing some sort of, not so much unsolved mysteries, although that might be something that comes up if people want to see that, but I'll be also moving into, I guess, unknown creatures, or cryptids, if you will. I'm a big fan of the Wiseman's Field Guide to Cryptids, and I just genuinely love reading about them, learning about them, all that kind of thing, from the Wendigo to the dragons of Australia. I just think they're fascinating. And so, with this episode, I'm going to be doing the Enfield Horror. Now, the Enfield Horror, not to be confused with the Enfield Haunting. Enfield Haunting, United Kingdom, Conjuring 2, that whole movie. That's what that's about. Now, the Enfield Horror is actually a creature, or a cryptid, that was sighted as, I think, as early as the 1800s out near Illinois, and also through a lot of different states and a lot of areas. Like, it's fascinating where it's gone. But I thought I'd do this video on this one. Now, before we get started, I'm going to start this one off, like, just in a moment, but I just hope if you guys want to see something different, or if you think this is a completely stupid idea, just let me know in the comments. I'd really love some feedback there. If you've got creatures you want me to look at, let me know. So far, I already plan on doing this, of course, the Enfield Horror, the Wendigo, the Dragons of Australia, Mothman, of course. You can't forget your boy, the Mothman. But aside from that, let me know in the comments. If you like this, give it a like. If you don't like this, let me know in the comments. If you want to call me mean names, I don't care. That's all good. Otherwise, I hope you enjoy this one. Now, the beginnings of this tale take place in Illinois, and if you know anything about cryptids and about what's out there in Illinois, you're going to know they're famous for things like strange lights, thunderbirds, and even phantom animals. This, on the other hand, was not something phantom. This left physical proof behind that still has people confused and uncertain till this day. Now, this one is the Henry McDaniel encounter, and a lot of it took place on the McDaniels property. So one evening, Mr. McDaniels and his wife both returned home, and their two children, Lil and Henry, were actually frightened. They said that something had been trying to get into their house. Had been scratching at the door, and they were actually pretty frightened by that. And it wasn't too long after this, Henry heard another scratching at the front door. Now, expecting that it was probably going to be a dog, maybe a cat, or even maybe some kind of other animal, he's opened it. And what he saw instead was described as having 3 legs, a short torso, or trunk as it were. It had 2 little short stubby arms, and had 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights. Torches, for those of you who don't use the word flashlights. It stood about 4.5 to 5 feet tall, and was actually grey coloured all over, and apparently it was trying to get into the house. Now, Henry, of course, being a smart man, slammed the damn door shut, as you would. There's a big, horrible thing outside. He went and grabbed his .22 pistol. It's a smaller caliber weapon, but also something that would be typically in a home for a defense situation, and he fired at it about 4 or 5 times. Now, Henry says first shot definitely hit, but it didn't even seem to react aside from hissing at him. And other sources have claimed that the hissing of this creature, which I will talk about later, was described as almost like that of a wildcat. Now, he fired at it and he knows at least the first shot hit. And what it then did was leap. And basically in 3 jumps, it covered around 50 to 75 feet. For those of us on the metric system, that's about 15 to 25 meters. Now look, I know a kangaroo can do a big jump and can sort of cover that kind of distance, but it's gotta have a bit of a go. Like, it's gotta be already moving, and I'm thinking it's probably more like the reds, so it wouldn't be a grey colour. After that, McDaniels lost sight of the creature, but it made its way towards the railroad, and yeah, at that point, he just called the police. And of course, the police come out there, they're going, are you really sure that's what you've seen? Despite the fact that about a few hours prior, the police had actually been called out to where a kid had been attacked by something strange. It had scratch marks and claw marks that had torn up his clothes, and the talons on this thing's feet had shredded up the kid's shoes, specifically tennis shoes, which are actually reasonably hardy, made from a thick canvas material. The one thing that did stun the investigators out there, the state troopers who actually came out, was the fact that they found footprints. They found footprints leading away. They found damage to the siding of the house, which indicated something big was scratching at it. But the thing that really freaked them out was that the footprints they found, they were patterned like a dog's footprints, but it had 6 toes. Now, in a lot of cases where a cryptid sighting like this happens, that tends to be it. It tends to be the end, it's the last we see of it, and it's fascinating. Or maybe we get one more paltry sighting, like what happened a few days later at 3 a.m. when McDaniel was woken from his sleep by the dogs just going ballistic. He's poked his head out, bit of a flashlight look, and out there on the train tracks is this thing. It is big, and it's just making its way along. McDaniel says he didn't shoot at it, because, well, look, let's be fair, it's 3 in the morning, you're gonna terrify your whole family, and probably your neighbors. Not to mention, those neighbors, one of them, the one who lived behind the McDaniels, was actually where the young child who'd been attacked by the creature lived. And it had only happened not long before the McDaniels first saw it, and he took fire at it, which, good. He did a good job defending his family, though we don't know what the creature was, that might have just made it angrier. But anyway, he's seen it just moseying down the tracks, not a care in the world, and just enjoying itself. He just watched it for a few minutes, just walk until it was out of his line of sight, and you know what? Credit to him, I would not have tried to go after it because, damn, it's 3 in the morning, that's horror movie hour. Now, at this point, he started telling other people what he's seen. The sheriff said, look, there's nothing we can really do out there because it's already gone. And yeah, fair to them. Problem is, once he started telling people, they started telling people, who started telling people, and as the cycle goes, a lot of people suddenly descended on this small town. Now, as a result of all these, monster hunters and these curiosity seekers, reporters, researchers, news stations all came out there trying to find this creature, and it was then called the Enfield Horror, because, by the description, it's pretty horrifying. Now, at this stage, the sheriff and the deputy sheriff, they're getting pretty annoyed, and you've got that many people all tromping around the woods with weapons. Yeah, I see why. It was actually a group of 5 young men were all arrested by the deputy sheriff after May the 3rd. But yeah, they were all arrested for threats to public safety, for hunting violations, and it was because they'd opened fire on something that they'd sighted. It was grey, it was hairy, and they'd seen it moving through some underbrush on the May 8th. Now, these, 2 of the men, they say they're very certain they hit it, but the thing just bolted away, and apparently it moved way faster than any man could, which, you can be a little thankful about, because if it was a grown man they'd shot at, that's really, really bad. Now, lending a little more, credibility, or, a credible witness to these going on, was Rick Rainbow. A fantastic name for anyone, especially for a radio station news director. He was a presenter for WWK1 in Kokomo. That's out in Indiana. Now, he and 3 other people he'd brought with him, they all spotted it near an abandoned house, just a short distance from the McDaniels property. Now, they didn't get much of a look at it as it was running away from them, but apparently they did manage to record its cry. Now, I have been searching for this. I cannot find a copy of the cry, which I really wish I could, because it would be really cool to put it in there. Now, if I do manage to find it, I'll slip it into this video before I release it, but so far, I've not had luck. Now, the wailing was actually, the screeches it made, which are described to sound like a wildcat, of course, they were also heard by a researcher, Lauren Coleman, who actually had also come down to try and search it, and they'd also heard these noises down near the McDaniel property. Now, at that point, there weren't really any other sightings in the area, at least in the Enfield area. Now, outside of there were plenty more sightings as late as 1999. At that point, yeah, Enfield had basically stopped seeing it, which, fair, you really don't want to look out your window and see that. I personally would probably just cry, because I am a coward, and I would just, open window, oh look, a horrible creature. Goodbye. I will cry now. Thank you. But other sightings, now that's where things get a bit interesting, especially from the locations. People have claimed that they've seen something very similar to the description. Now, all of this took place in 1973 that is, of course, but that wasn't the end of it. In 1974, out towards Chicago, 2 police officers were actually attacked by what they described as a marsupial. Now, I don't know how they got close enough to check if it had a pouch, but I'm gonna believe them in this instance because, yeah, that's kind of terrifying. It was in October, and it just got away by jumping a really high fence. There was another sighting out in Mount Vernon, way earlier than this, actually. I'll get to the Mount Vernon one a little bit later. Let's go with what happened afterwards. Now, in Oklahoma in 1975 it was spotted, in Golden, Colorado in 1976, Wisconsin in 78, and all the way up in Canada in 1979, then back down to Delaware. Now, in the 80s, the only sighting reported was in the San Francisco area, but in the following year, all through the summer, there were reports coming in from Utah, Oklahoma, and North Carolina. It was again seen in Detroit in 84, and then in Iowa as recently as 1999. You know, that's probably kind of creepy that, as far as 1999, when basically we've got cameras, we've got an ability to, I guess, share footage, that's starting to come up. The internet's still in its infant stages at that point, but I remember using the internet at school, and I was in primary school, but yeah, that's a kind of a terrifying thought that all the way then. But going back a bit, actually, the Enfield Horror, the McDaniels encounters, it's also called, it was actually not the first sighting of a creature like this, in this creepy and weird description. A lot of other cases it's described as ape-like, or baboon-like, or even gorilla-like. But what a lot of people can actually agree about is, in a single jump, it's covering, up to 40 feet in a single jump, and 20 to 40 feet. Now look, that sounds like a lot. That is 6 to 12 meters in a single jump. But as you'll see when I sort of break it down at the end, I do have my own thoughts on that, and basically how that rates up to an actual kangaroo. Now, getting back to other sightings of this creature, in 1899, one of the earliest recorded, witness accounts of this, a kangaroo, as it were, was spotted in New Richmond, Wisconsin. Now, in 1934, farmers in the South Pittsburgh region in Tennessee complained that a giant kangaroo was killing, basically their dogs and their chickens, or their fowl. It was tracked out to a mountainside cave, but after that point, no sighting of it was seen again. Now, Coleman, the researcher, actually found a record of a sighting in 1941. Now, this was similar to the Mount Vernon one. That's where the other creature was, the one that's just near the McDaniels property. This took place in 1941 and 1942. It was actually blamed for a lot of basically animal killings in the area, and a lot of people were terrorized by this creature. It was horrible, it was terrifying, and it mutilated animals, and which is just awful. Out there, they call it the Mount Vernon monster, and interestingly enough, it's only about less than 40 miles from Enfield. Now, at that stage, a hunter out there actually fired his shotgun at this creature because it dropped out of a tree directly in front of him. And yeah, of course it ran off, which is smart. If something fired a shotgun at me, I'm either going to freeze or run away crying. One of the two. Now, after that, in 1949, now keep in mind here, we've just done, 1941 and 1942 we're up to now. In 1949, in Grove City, Ohio, it was sort of a creature described as a kangaroo-type beast was spotted by a bus driver. Then in Nebraska in 58, there were more sightings. All the way through into the late 50s and into the 1960s, there were more sightings of this thing out in the woods near Coon Rapids in Minnesota, which I think is a terrible name for a place. Now, in Abilene and Wakefield, Kansas in 1965, the creature was reported being spotted out there. All the way out in Washington, on Route 63 in Ohio, Michigan State University in 1968, and then in Kansas in 1971. Now, after that, we have the McDaniels encounter, the most famous encounter of this creature, and then we've also got the other future sightings right up until 1999. Now, it's been 100 years of sightings of this creature, so either it's very long-lived, or there's a lot of them. Maybe there's something that just roams and wanders the area, but no one's really been able to, I guess, guarantee what they've seen. Nothing's been able to actually sit there and go, well, no one, rather, has been able to sit there and go, yeah, I know exactly what it is, here is proof. No hunters have been able to bag one, no one's been able to catch one on camera. We have a recording out there somewhere, and if anyone out there watching this actually has the recording, I would love it if you linked it to me or sent it to me. I'd love to hear what this thing sounds like. But yeah, just as far as 1999, we have 100 years of sightings all through the northern United States and up into Canada, but no visual proof. We don't have anyone who's managed to snag a photo of this thing And I can understand up in 1999 you see something like that, yeah, let's just run. I would just run. It's fair. It sounds like it's terrifying. It's 5 foot tall. No, thank you. But I personally have a few thoughts on this. A lot of people are comparing it to a kangaroo, and a lot of what I'm reading, people seem very shocked about the feats of physical strength it's actually pulling. And I do have some thoughts on that. Now, taking the kangaroo angle, let's just go with that. A red kangaroo, they're the big roochies we've got out in Australia. They are mean, and you do not approach them. Every person in Australia, they have someone they know who knows someone who was attacked by a roo. Kangaroos are terrifying. I have been chased by kangaroos before, and the only reason I got away is because I had a very large dog with me who was barking at it and basically gave it a fright. Now, I don't know if it actually chased me in hindsight. I think maybe it was as startled as I was. But yeah, kangaroos are big. Now, a lot of these things, they say this thing was covering 75 feet within 3 bounds, or was leaping like 25 to 40 feet in a single jump. Well, a red kangaroo can do that. They can just do that. You know, a red kangaroo can go up to nearly 50 k's an hour in speed. Now, that's 30 miles, or 35 miles for those using the Imperial system. But yeah, that's absurd. Like, that's how fast a red kangaroo travels. So, honestly, I think if this thing tried to front against a red kangaroo, if the Enfield Horror tried to front at a red kangaroo, considering it was described as being around 5 to 5.5 foot tall, a red kangaroo stands at over 5 foot 10. Now that's 1.8 meters. These things are taller than me. Oh, they are taller than me. That's embarrassing. You know, these things are big. You know, they are beefy, and like if you're seeing it now, they are big, and it's creepy how like muscular they are, and I don't like it. Now, the thing that kind of that's interesting is that there weren't a lot of descriptions of a tail, and that's the big factor. Kangaroos need their tails. It's part of their balance. Part of a kangaroo's attack is they lean back on their tail and they rake down with their hind legs, and those things have big claws on them. Now, that's what makes me land more credence to this wasn't any form of kangaroo, because though the speeds and, you know, a lot of the actions of it hopping like that do match up, you know, the lack of tail in a lot of descriptions that I've been looking at kind of makes me and ah about it, you know, unless people just weren't seeing the tail. But if it's running away from you, you see their tails. Their tails are big. You know, the average tail length of a red kangaroo is about 3 feet. Now that's 88 centimeters. That's long. You know, nearly a meter. You know, overall, a red kangaroo, you know, they're big, and they're probably bigger than what this creature is. Now, other places have described seeing something like this, but they lend more, I guess, ape-like features to it. You know, a lot of them describe something like a baboon, or a gorilla, or just other creatures like that tend to be the description that people use, and that's actually really interesting that there's been so much difference, but so many times people are all attributing it to the same creature. No, I don't know what it is, but by the description, I really don't think it was any form of actual kangaroo, just because kangaroos will mess you up, but a person can beat one in a fight. There are YouTube videos out there of someone punching a kangaroo in the head because it had the dog in a headlock. Yes, kangaroos put animals in headlocks. That is terrifying. They've got the arm movement capacity to do that. And that's also why the thing being described as having tiny little T-Rex arms, kangaroos actually have quite decently sized arms. They are big animals. So, I guess on this one, you know, we don't know what it is these people saw. But something was out there, it was killing animals, it was attacking people that were on their own, and was cited by a lot of different sources. Yeah, I'd really like to know, in the comments if you can, you know, let me know what you think it was. Because I've given my opinion, and I would love to hear yours. But aside from that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye!